Well, hi everyone, welcome to today's blog as we journey ever closer towards Easter. We're now in the 5th week of Lent and Easter's fast coming around the corner. And this week Walter Brueggemann is going to take us right up to Palm Sunday, and we begin with a passage he calls Called Against the Distortion. Called Against the Distortion. And he takes us at a passage of scripture, some words from St. Paul when St. Paul was writing his first letter to the church in Corinth, 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 26 through to 29. This is what Paul has to say. Consider your own call then, brothers and sisters, for not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many of you were powerful. Not many of you were of noble birth. But God has chosen what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, things that are not, to reduce to nothing things that are, so that no one might then be able to boast in the presence of God. They're beautiful words, and they sort of have a certain poetry and rhythm around them. But what is Paul actually trying to reach for, and what is Walter Brueggemann trying to point us to as we journey towards Easter? Well, it's something about this. At the time when Paul wrote, Corinth was a major metropolis at the hub of Greek and Roman life. There were many famous politicians. There were the whole religious setup around Aphrodite. There was the whole business to do with the trade, toing and froing throughout the Mediterranean. Corinth was the hub of it all, and it had a lifestyle to match. And we might think of a modern day metropolis like London or Paris or New York or whatever, and capturing very much that life where there were the movers and shakers, the celebrities, there was, in their case, the famous politicians, people of noble birth. It all went together, and yet Paul says that's not how God sees it. All these things that so often we read about in our newspapers or we see on the televisions that give people status, actually to Paul and to God, they don't mean anything at all. In fact, if anything, he turns it completely upside down. He sees, like Jesus did, the widow's mite. When the people were putting great wealth in the temple treasury in Jerusalem, Jesus notices and points it out to his disciples that this woman, who was a widow in her poverty, gave everything she had, and the generosity of her heart far surpassed the wealth of the others. He saw and used the example of the Good Samaritan, when the others simply passed by on the other side. He saw that generosity of heart to reach beyond the boundaries and to help the other. He looks into the heart of Mary. We had this story only yesterday, where she takes her dowry and pours out her dowry over Jesus' feet. But really, more than even the cost of the dowry, it's the love that's in her heart, the devotion in her soul that he truly values more than anything. These are the things that God sees in each of us, and he wants to draw out of us as we journey with him towards Easter, letting go of those trappings that are perhaps the things that so often we can think define us. Our jobs, our looks, our status, our number of friends on Facebook or whatever. All these things disappear in God's eyes. He sees right into the core of each of us and sees what is beautiful, and he wants to draw that out of us. And of course, sometimes there can be people who are very popular on the outward side of things and yet strangely have nothing, and those on the in seem almost to be on the edge of things, and yet God notices the beauty that is within them. I wonder whether you can think of people like that. I certainly can in my life, and people I've had the privilege of coming to walk alongside over these years in being part of a church community. It's probably one of the key things that's helped me to see the world in a different way than I used to see it before I became a Christian. and it's a privilege. I see the value in the older person. I see the value in the younger person. I see the value in the person who, against all the odds, struggles and then discovers that they can and indeed are loved. I can remember a lady who in her day was an Olympic athlete, and in the birth of her first child suffered from incredibly aggressive arthritis, to the point where she even her fingers would break when she played the piano, and she loved playing the piano. And Jill, she used to walk with sticks, and to many other people they would have just passed by. But to spend time in the presence of Jill, even in the face of all the pain and the struggle that she was going through, you really met somebody who was probably the most whole person I think I've ever met. So beautiful in who she was and is, not because she just pretended it didn't matter what she'd been through. No, she lived with everything that was going on for her, but she didn't have an edge to her. She saw the hope and the joy in each and every person. And I'm sure you've met people like that, and maybe you are one of those people. And that's one of the things about the power of our culture, both in the time of Corinth, but even today. Often such people don't believe they're anyone, and yet they are in God's eyes. And those who think they're somebody, well, they really aren't. It's all upside down, and I love God for it. So as we journey towards Easter, I'd encourage you to look for these things in the Easter story. Look for the way Jesus sees more than just the few steps ahead and sees the big picture. The way he notices also the detail of each of these characters that he comes across over these days, and indeed how he looks into your heart and into my heart and seeks to bring out of us, even if we've been a Christian for many years, new wonderful diamonds of our worth and value, not based on the world's values, but based on God's wisdom and love. So we'll look forward to that as we journey on together. Have a good rest of the day. Bye for now. God bless. Bye-bye.